Good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a good day like we are. We got all four of us here tonight, so that's a good thing. We're prepared for you. I want to start off tonight by asking you a question. How many of you have ever walked into your chicken yard or your coop on a cold winter morning and immediately thought, my birds don't look quite right today? Maybe they're huddled together. Maybe they're quieter than usual. Maybe they just didn't want to get up and get out of the coop. But now here's the real question. Were they actually telling you something? Or were they simply acting like chickens on a cold morning? It's about helping you learn to read your birds. That's what we're here for tonight. And I gotta confess, I'm down here in Florida, and we don't have much in the way of really cold weather. Uh, so I'm kind of at loss, and I'm going to depend on my cohorts here to fill in some of the blanks that I don't know. But we had freezing weather this past winter, but we hadn't had any for 3 years prior to that, and it runs in about a 3 to 4 year cycle here. So just remember, winter doesn't change the weather. It doesn't just change the weather; it changes how chickens communicate. Now, I know one of the things that I've noticed with my birds, even when it doesn't get really, really cold, is my birds are not as active. They were doing their best, I assume, to conserve energy. Jeff, what's some of the things that you've encountered?
My birds on a snowy, cold winter morning, the feathers tend to be up, kind of fluffed. They don't like to come outside. If at the first snowfall, when the ground is white, they're like, "What the heck is this stuff?" Right? And I just scattered some straw on the ground and let them walk out on it. And once they figure it out, they're okay. Right after the first snowfall of the year, but yeah, look, they're going to act different because they're in new surroundings, right?
Hmm.
It's something new for them if it's a younger flock, not a bunch of older birds. They haven't experienced it before. Um, but yeah, the key factor for them is, making sure that that water isn't frozen and that you got a properly adjusted feed formula for that climate or time of year, right? And but they're they're like you said, they're lethargic. They stay on the roost a little bit longer. Um, they're just not, but they're still healthy, right?
Yeah.
Their eyes are still clear. Their breathing is fine. Okay, they're just a little slower and maybe apprehensive. Um, on those colder mornings.
A lot like we are when we first walk outside.
Yeah,
Amen.
yeah.
Sue, I'm curious. You have some pretty wild weather out there in Oklahoma.
Indeed.
Have you noticed any changes in your birds' feeding patterns or behavior during winter as compared to spring and summer?
Yeah. I mean, once winter hits and it really starts getting cold, their feed consumption goes up. And I mean, I change it up a little bit, add a little more corn into their food to, especially in the evening, to help warm them up a little bit before they go to bed.
What about and this is something I noticed in mine. Did you notice any change in their roosting behavior?
Well, they weren't spread out. They all huddled together,
Yeah, that's what I saw. That's exactly
keeping
what I saw.
keeping warm. Uh, and then, like the way my coops are set up, they have solid walls on either side where the roost bar goes across,
Hmm.
and so they'll get up against whatever side is against the wind. To where they don't get that cold moving around on them quite so much.
Carrie, and you're getting closer to where I am, a little further south. But have you noticed? I know you spend a good bit of time with your birds. Have you noticed any social interaction changes between your birds?
Yeah. Like it's a lot like it is right now. Right now they're hot and miserable, and they're not wanting to hang out in groups and party. They're just kind of as high as they can get on a roost pole, trying to relax and stay cool. And in the wintertime, they'll huddle together, but like the playing and stuff like that, I don't really see a lot of that. My which for me, that's a problem about 3 weeks out of the year, sometimes four, but that's usually a stretch. It'll get teens to 20s if Mother Nature does us a really good favor, low teens. That way we'll have less mosquitoes. But it's not very long. But the biggest problem that I encounter usually is water, except for after a guy gave me a really ridiculous idea that is extremely effective and works really well.
Now, when you say water, is that drinking water? I
Yes,
assume
sir.
you're talking. Okay.
Yep.
One thing I noticed with my birds is that when it was cold, they seemed to want to spend more time in the sun.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, of course, in the summer, they're pretty much critters of find a shade tree and get under it.
Yeah.
But
Me
during the
too.
winter, they seek out that sunlight.
Yeah. I love it when they walk out in the yard and just flop over and throw that wing out, look like they're half dead.
Sometimes that will almost make you panic
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it has.
because,
Yeah, it sure has.
yeah, I have Rambo that walks around the yard. And when I left the house 2 days ago, which up until today was the hottest day we had, he was in the front yard like a zombie. And I was like, I went over there and I picked him up. Everything felt fine. Got him some water. And, he started squirming and wanted down and then he took off.
Hmm.
But I was like, oh no, it's too hot for this old fella. But he's a survivor.
One thing I want to throw out to our listeners um, is to, when you're observing your birds, stop looking for problems,
Mhm.
but start looking for patterns in their behavior. It's going to take you a while of observation to find out what's normal for your flock, and it's going to be a little bit different from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that has to do with geographic location. Um, mine would probably think I had gone off and forsaken them if we were to get snow down here. But I know
Yeah.
where Sue and Jeff lives. That's a fact of life that the birds have to deal with.
I was gonna say that's another day between November, December, and February.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's okay.
Once you figure out what is normal, then you can start to look for abnormal winter behavior.
Mhm.
For example, I talked about my birds liking to get into the sun. Well, if I ever saw them on a cold day getting into the shade, I'd be concerned and wonder what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, one thing that I have found helpful in observing the flock and teaching others to observe the flock is that it's important to read the flock before you start trying to read the individuals.
Always.
Um, you pick on a bird doing something wrong and you think, oh, I got this problem and I got that problem. That may not. What are the other birds doing?
Yeah, you're right. You never treat for the outlier, so to speak, or
Right.
the one or two. Um, you need to observe what the whole flock is doing. You always have the one oddball that's going to be different, one or two oddballs, and it doesn't mean that there's a problem, right? It's just they're reacting differently to the conditions. Especially if it's new conditions that they haven't experienced before, they don't know what to do, right? But people tend to be, do that knee jerk reaction, right? And they want to treat the whole flock because one bird, did something different. And
Let's give them all Corey.
yeah, yeah, don't get me started. So,
Too early in the morning for that.
yeah, too early and not enough coffee for that conversation. So,
I had to.
yeah, it's just, yeah, what is the majority doing, right? I mean, you always look for the outlier and try and identify why it's being different, but you never treat the entire flock for what the outlier is doing, right? If you feel like you got to do something, treat the outlier, not treat the entire flock, right? Just different behavior does not mean there's something horrible coming to your entire flock. I think that's the number one thing that I have fight or deal with. When people call or reach out to me at Fertrell to they think they've got a problem coming, and they overreact, and yeah, I don't know. It's hard to deal with.
Jeff, and I want to ask you a question here. If you were to go out and observe your flock on a cold day, what's some of the things that you would look for to make sure they're all right, or to make sure or to find out if there's a problem?
Birds can tolerate the cold really, really well, right? Working with friends like Kelly Gear up in Saskatchewan, he's kept birds. We're talking minus 20, minus 30. Okay. He doesn't change his feed formula. He doesn't change. He really doesn't change anything.
Change nothing.
Okay. As long as you are keeping the wind off of the birds, so just like us, right? On those cold days, they're just going to be a little slower than they would be on a spring day. But actually, other than sitting in the sunlight, or maybe being huddled together, their activity level in the dead of summer, when you're 100 degrees, or the dead of winter at 10 degrees, they're going to be very similar. They're going to not be moving. They're not going to show the same activity level that you'd like to see in April or October, right? When they're moving around, they're really comfortable. That's their comfort zone. But it doesn't mean you have a problem, right? My birds did fine. They just moved a little slower. Every step was more calculated, so to speak, right? They didn't waste as many steps, just frolicking around and to have a good time. They got food, they got water. There's not as much to scratch in the winter, but they do a little bit. Unless you give them something to encourage that, which you don't have to, right? It's not that big a deal. I was just sitting here doing the calculations, because in past episodes, we've told people to do like Sue does, give a little corn, to offset for the cold temperatures. Even in those minus temperatures where you would be looking at roughly an extra 100 calories, that's 1 pound of corn for every 15 or 16 chickens, right? People don't realize how much energy is actually in that corn. And the best time to give that's going to be late in the day. I did see the one question, they feed them a treat in the evening. that's the perfect time to do it, right before they go to the roost, when they're going to have their least active period of the day. If you want to offset the temperatures, but look, we're only looking at a half an ounce to not more than 1 ounce of that corn supplement per bird per day, right? Otherwise, you're going to lead to that fatty liver, fatty chicken again, right? And, I hate to say it, but the number one thing I see killing, flocks out there is, fatty liver disease, right? Birds are too over conditioned. I've seen a bunch of pictures posted not long ago. You could take a half a pound of fat outside from the inside of a chicken, right? And that's not what they're supposed to be. That's not normal. Okay. We don't do that. Okay. It's just, anyway.
In regards to that, Jeff, I told you that I'd backed off on the feed, noticing that my older hens were overweight. Well, they've dropped a little bit of weight, and turning them out in the yard, they are doing way better than they did last summer. Last summer, they had no interest in coming out of the coop at all. And now they come out and they wander around and they scratch and they peck and they lay in the shade, but they're way more active than they were last year. So
that's good.
I've noticed a big difference in that.
Good.
Yep.
Stu, here's a question for you. You're out in your coops observing your birds. Which bird usually catches your attention first, and why?
Well, I'm partial to him, but your namesake always catches my eye because he takes very good care of his girls, and he lets them eat before he eats, and so I'm more concerned with his health than the girls, because he does that, and so he's the one that I pay the most attention to.
A question for you, and you're talking about he waits to eat before the girls.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're out there one morning and he's eating at the same time or before the girls start. Would that alert you to a potential problem?
Yeah, it would. Either digestion or maybe. He'll be what, 3,
3, yeah,
4, almost 4. So, another factor, I might want to do a fecal float and check him for worms.
Yeah.
That he's not absorbing his nutrients to where he's more hungry than the girls are. And so he's butting them out to get into the food. So he's obviously, not getting enough nutrition, for whatever reason. So,
Carrie, since you're in one of those borderline areas, did you ever notice a behavior in your birds that confused you or puzzled you until you figured out what they were telling you?
Yeah, it's happened a couple times. And it's usually when the weather makes a huge swing. And for me, like you were talking about earlier, observing my birds, until I observed them for a very long period, at first I was like, what are they doing? What's going on? Why are they acting this way? They should be doing this from everything I've ever seen, so on and so forth. But it's just my birds that, they do certain things at certain times of the year in certain situations that are different, because like sometimes I raise game fowl and large fowl, and my game fowl will be in like my hen pen. They could be really active, moving around, up and down from the roost, this, that, and the other. And my large fowl are sitting on the roost, hoping the wind blows harder. Or they'll be sitting on the roost and you're like, where's his head at? What's going on? Head tucked up under the feather. It's like they're already done for the day,
Yeah.
and the others will be moving around, but that's usually the biggest difference.
I if I I think I would have to say that game fowl can be some of the most active breeds around.
Some of them are very active.
And then you got the leghorns and the anconas and all those squirrely chain birds. But
Yeah. Hey, Rip, we got a couple of questions.
yeah, lay them up, lay them
over
on us.
here. The first one, this person says lethargic and not eating is a pretty good sign they aren't doing good. But could maybe you or somebody elaborate on what it could be a sign of, or what to check?
Well, like I said, I've never encountered that down here in the sunny South. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it depends on I expect a little bit of slower activity in the colder climate, but I should not see a change in appetite. If anything, like Sue described, you should see more aggressive eating. They should be hungrier, trying to get more calories, or and adjusting. So the appetite should remain the same. Off feed or not eating correctly is always a warning sign with a chicken. So, but I would need more. You're not going to make a change. I can't make a recommendation just simply because of lethargic and not eating, right? So to me, lethargic not eating is kind of the precursor of, there's something larger going on with that individual bird. So what's the age? If they're not eating well, is the feed fresh enough? Or is it good feed, not moldy? There's a whole long laundry list of questions I would have for that individual. Right? I can't really make a recommendation just on lethargic and not eating good. Yeah,
But that would be a bird that you would definitely want to spend more time observing, possibly even put in a drop pen away from the rest of the flock.
Yeah, put it in its own separate pen, or even if I put it in like a dog crate or some sort of wire cage within the coop with everybody else, because I don't want to lose that socialization. I don't want to separate them and then try and bring them back, because that could lead to other problems as well. So
that can turn ugly.
Yeah. So sometimes having a separate cage, almost like a show cage, in there or available to you, or like a wire dog crate that's all wire. So, they're still there. They're still part of the flock. You just put them in a corner and you observe them, to see what's going on. A lot of times when I see that, lethargic and not eating, again, that goes back to a lot of times I see that as, it's an overweight chicken and the heart's about ready to give up, and, the bird's about ready to kick the bucket. Right. So, but I don't want to say that. I don't want somebody to take what I just said and think every bird that's lethargic and not eating is about to have a heart attack, because it could be so many different things.
Yeah. It could be.
You got to have more symptoms.
things.
Right. Got to have more symptoms to go with that. Right.
Yeah.
Not just that.
All right. Now, Sue, I know you've seen this one. Pale wattles on a rooster concerned really cold winter days.
Yes.
What are some things that you could do for that?
Well, in the case of my birds, which are the big reds, I would pick that boy up and bring him into either the house or into a heated barn and get him warmed up. They're bad to get frostbite. That would be my first concern. My second concern would be possible, heart failure, overweight. Something's going on if his wattles are pale. Even on a cold day, they should be bright red.
Yeah, because I like mine. even in the wintertime when it's really cold here, which is nothing for you, but they don't really get pale.
Jeff, what's your thoughts on that?
Pale wattles to me is often a sign of circulatory, poor circulation.
Mhm.
Whether it gets too dark or whether it gets too light. So just a lot of times I'll go at that by putting a little bit of vinegar in the water just to see if it makes the change. It's a simple, it kind of, but yeah, I mean, how cold are we talking about that you were seeing pale wattles? But, it's the birds telling you kind of what their circulatory system's doing and also what their body temperature is kind of doing.
Mhm.
So it would not be uncommon. And it can also be a sign of what the oxygen content is, right? So, do I even have enough air in my coop to, it's going to be oxygen content of the bloodstream and how well the bloodstream's flowing, right? So that's what I'm looking at, and make corrections based on that. So
Now, Esther has a couple good ones. She says that her chickens are missing winter right now.
Yeah. Mine
And
too.
where she's at, they have really cold, brutal winters.
Yeah.
But I mean, mine are missing it too.
Yeah.
I'm missing it.
Esther's
I
up in New Hampshire, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
She also says that she hangs alfalfa hay in the wintertime. I mean, it gives them something to do,
Yeah.
nutrition.
Kind of an enrichment type thing. I did that with heads of cabbage.
Protein.
Because I really don't know that you could. Where she's at, there's not pasture to let them out on unless you dig through the snow.
Yeah.
See, good morning from Perth. And we got one right here for Jeff.
Good morning.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff, is there a lower thermal limit for chickens like there are with cows where you have to feed X amount more of calories? Cattle, where this person is, eat more than 10% more per day.
there's yes, and I'm not sure. I thought I put it in the files part of either Poultry Keepers 360 or Poultry Breeder Nutrition, but it's like a heat. It's a temperature to calorie comparison chart. So like at zero, like I was talking about earlier, the average chicken needing about 320 kilocalories per day. When you start hitting that zero range, we're up around 4. It's an additional 100 kilocalories. That's where I come up with that 1 ounce of corn, additional corn to make that difference. So they do, they're going to try to compensate for the temperature, where they're going to increase they're going to want to increase their calories. Now, in Chris's situation, if I was in the interior of Alaska, I would be keeping fat and trimmings off of the wildlife that I harvest, because animal fat is probably the best calorie option for him in those extreme cold temperatures, right? So, if I shot my moose, I shot my caribou or whatever, right, I'd be keeping any excess fat for those animals during that time of the year.
Yeah, he said that after day 3 of -30 is the high, his ducks just totally stopped eating, and he had to bring them in the garage. And they saw 41 days of -20, and a half of them were below -40.
I would love to troubleshoot this more with Chris, but here's the thing: is if they don't have access to water, if the water's not warm and easy to drink, if the water's frozen, the birds aren't going to eat. Okay, and I mean it's a good way to throw them into a molt. So water is more important than feed, and people lose sight of this all the time, right? Air's the most important, water's the second most important, feed comes third, right? So it's not. So chickens waking up to frozen water is a complete no, right? That's not even an option. So
That's like Jeff waking up to no coffee.
exactly
Just don't do it.
that is the perfect analogy. Okay, so um, yeah, when chicken comes off the roost or any poultry when they wake up in the morning, really the first thing they need is water. Okay, so you need to have systems in place for that to make sure that they have access to, drinking water when they wake up in the morning.
And I'll tell you,
Gotta have it.
with that constant flow system that I made last year, when I had to go out in the mornings to check on them, it cut that time down a whole lot because I did not have frozen water cups, frozen nipples. I didn't have none of that frozen to have to mess with. And it was really nice.
That makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Chris said that he did have warm water with them 3 times a day, a rubber 2.5-gallon bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great, Chris. And, I applaud that. But when they wake up in the morning, it's got to be there when the lights come on in the morning, right? Whether it's natural daylight or, it has to be there before they wake up. It's probably going to be the most critical. And
And it's just like Jeff and his coffee. The smell of coffee will wake you up before the alarm will.
Don't be picking on Jeff all the time now.
that's
Come on.
okay. That's all right. My coffee maker is set up to be that my coffee's ready before my feet ever hit the floor. And you know what? I can hear the little beeper, that tells me when the coffee's ready from my bed. So it's kind of the prelude to the morning.
Now
Right.
that's his alarm's fixing to go off.
Well, yeah, I can hear the coffee maker alarm before I can hear my regular alarm. So it's a good thing.
That's bad, but at least you're honest about it. So
That's right. I'm not waiting for coffee in the morning, so that's not an option. Okay.
Exactly.
Jeff, here's a question. I'm going to ask you only because I suspect you interact with more people on a regular basis, troubleshooting problems and this, that, and the other than we do. But what's one behavior that new poultry keepers may often misinterpret? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, probably number one is the first time they see any runny poop that's a different color, any manure dropping that is runny or not the same color as every other bird in the pen, that's the cord conversation, right? People start freaking out that they got worms or they got this or they got coccidiosis. And the more I'm learning, Carrie and I are kind of uncovering this in a different avenue, but learning that birds cycle about every 21 days, right? The normal cycle for poultry is 21 days. So, on that 20, somewhere in that cycle, their body temperature will adjust and you're going to see, at least 1 or 2 droppings that are looser and a different color, right? And there's 2 glands in there, the ceca glands, that are supposed to recycle, and you should see a cecal dump, about once a month out of a chicken, right? So, or a poultry bird, period. Doesn't matter, duck, chicken, whatever. So, yeah, I think the over exaggerated concern of one manure dropping that looks unusual is probably the number one thing that I talk to people about. So.
Here's something that it kind of.
Sue had to leave us.
Oh, okay.
She had the storm that was brewing decided to brew
Uh-oh.
her internet right off.
Oh no.
Yeah.
As long as she's safe, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. She sent me a text message.
One thing that I saw one time that really threw me for a loop until I was kind of able to figure out what was going on. And it was a cold day in mid-January, if I remember correctly. It was back when I was first getting started with reds, and I probably had about 100 birds at that point. And I went out there, and the vast majority of them were standing on one leg with the other one picked up and tucked up against themselves. And I thought, what in the world is going on here? And then I'd sat there and I watched them for a little while, and the leg they had raised, they'd put back down, and then raise the other one.
Yeah, the alternate.
Yep, it kind of hit me. Okay, well, they're keeping 1 foot at least warm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Depending on the environment, like if they're on bare dirt, bare soil, and if there's any moisture to it, then they'll do that more. If there's not ample amount of bedding, and people in colder climates need to keep a deeper bedding. Okay, so
There
for
we
that
are.
insulation factor. Hi, Sue. Welcome back.
Hey,
We're having a heck of a storm.
well, I hope it doesn't get too rank.
Yeah, a little bit of hail, but a lot of rain. A lot of rain.
Another thing that I noticed when it was cold here is that I was used to seeing all my birds just kind of spread out in the run, doing their own little thing, scratching, looking for bugs or whatever. But on this particular day, they were all ganged up on one side of the coop. And I thought, that's odd.
Mm.
And then I realized they were on the left side of the coop. Well, the wind was coming from the right side of the coop. They just tried to get out of the wind.
Mm.
I mean, it's not like they were plotting and scheming against me or anything. But
They might have wanted you to hurry up with that feed bucket.
they never were very patient birds.
I was going to say, if they're Rhode Island Reds, that's exactly what they were doing.
Well, I'm laughing because she is so right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're little red piggies. Yep.
I
Yeah.
used to call my chicks my little red feeder pigs,
Uh-huh.
and that was about the size of it. Quiet
Yeah.
birds. Jeff, could that ever be a clue that something's going on?
In the hierarchy of a flock, you're always going to have 2 or 3 that are exceptionally rowdy, right? Bullies, so to speak, louder, and then you're always going to have 2 to 3, depending on the flock size. You're always going to have those that are the timid birds. And I always worry about the timid birds more than I do, the over aggressive type birds.
Mm-hmm.
In making sure that I have enough feeder space, water space, and they're not being challenged for what they need in their environment, right? A lot of times they're too timid actually to get to the feeder to get what they need. And that's why you've heard me. I'm a big proponent of having enough feeder space for every bird to eat at the exact same time, right?
It makes a
It's just-
huge difference. Huge
Yeah.
difference.
And you should actually have 10% more feeder space than you actually need. Okay. Because those timid birds just do not want to push in. Right.
Well,
They're
they're so used to
afraid.
getting banged up that when they
Yeah.
try that, I can understand that.
Yeah. And it's not like you can replace them. In every flock, you're going to have that 10% that are the bullies, and you're going to have the 10% that are extremely, timid, right? And they're going to standoffish. So setting up your environment so that the birds can make sure that they can get what they need is going to be critical. Okay. But, I don't get excited because I have a timid bird. I just understand that, again, I flip my 5-gallon bucket over, or I have a chair at the coop and I sit there and I watch at feeding time. So you feed, do what you got to do, at feeding, do your chores. But then if you sit there and you watch them for about 10 minutes, you'll soon understand a whole lot more about your birds.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, look, if you're a manager who just wants to feed and run, then you're not the right person for the job. Okay.
No.
You better let somebody else do it. Okay?
And Jeff, you're right. So many times, and I was talking with somebody about this a couple of days ago, that when you first go out there in the morning to let them out or whatever, their attention is solely on you, and they're not going to be behaving normally. You got to wait about 8-10 minutes at least for them to settle back down and get into their routine, so to speak.
Right.
At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, for 30 years, I've told people, take your favorite beverage with you, right? If you need a glass of tea, you want a cup of coffee, whatever, just do your chores, do what you need to do, have a seat, enjoy your birds, right? And, do your observations. And if you can do this 2 to 3 times a week, you're gonna get ahead of any real, issue that's coming. Right, because you're going to see it way ahead of time.
Before we go any further, I want to take about 45-second break here. I got something I want to do, so let's do it. We would like to take a short break to express our appreciation to the Poultry Company for their sponsorship of the Poultry Keepers 360 Live programming. Poultry has been a trusted name in sustainable farming and poultry nutrition for decades, and their commitment to providing high-quality, natural product align perfectly with the values we hold dear in our poultry community. Thank you, Poultry, for partnering with us to empower poultry keepers everywhere. We're truly grateful for your dedication and support. So absolutely, yes. Thank you for Trell. And before we get back into talking, I want to remind everybody that with our new educational effort here, not only are we going to be talking about something like we are tonight, but we're going to give you the tools that you can take it and go another step with it. So with that said, if you want a copy of our observation journal and observation before intervention sheet, they're in the file section of the Facebook group Poultry Keepers 360 or Poultry Breeders Nutrition. They're absolutely free, and download a copy. You know what I really hope? I really hope before the night's over, you'll go download a copy, especially the observation journal, and then to use it tomorrow morning. And let us know what you learned from it. I want to know if that's really helpful to you or not. Okay? Thank you.
Hey, Rip.
Yo.
What is your preferred email address?
Well, I only got one. It is
I thought Poultry Keepers had one.
No, it never really worked out. I never got too much stuff there. My email address is Stalvey, STALVEY .rip, RIP, @gmail.com.
Well, I don't want to volunteer you for anything, so y'all can message me otherwise. But we do have a decent amount of listeners that are not on Facebook. So
Yes, we do.
If any of y'all would like, y'all could get in touch with me, and I can either email that to you directly, or I'll stick it in the blog section on the website somewhere to where you can go download that, because we do have a pretty large amount of viewers
Oh yeah.
that don't do social media. So I
And
thought
we
I'd
have
put that out
a
there.
lot of members that don't join us on these chats either. So, but we'll get it
Touche.
to you one way or the other if you want it. And I've shuffled my papers around now until I've lost my place here.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It's mine.
This time.
Yeah. Like I said when we started tonight, our goal is not to teach you winter behavior, although we've covered a fair amount of that. But our goal is to help you go out and walk into your chicken yard tomorrow morning and notice things that you would have walked right past on Thursday morning. What's new, what's different. And that's where that observation journal comes in so handy for that. And even if you don't have the observation journal, make notes. Get a notebook, make some notes, because if you're like me, you may see it and you'll think, oh, I will remember that. Not so much.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was like, observation journal. It's a nice idea, but. And then I thought, I don't even remember what I ate for lunch yesterday. I need to print me one of these out
There
and
you
actually
go.
use it,
There you
because
go.
I do like to make notes about different things that my birds do, and it's a thing, because it's how you notice stuff ahead of time.
Well, Kerry, I think that's really important, because over time, and it may not be a month, it may not be 2 months, it may take a year, but you'll begin to see trends of what your birds are doing. And you'll begin to understand, A, what is normal, and B, what is abnormal when you see it.
Well, like if you look at the bird over my shoulder and see, those are not the best looking reds out there, but they do meet the definition of a red. But you see the one that has the white feather. If you didn't know what you knew about your birds from watching your birds, you saw a white feather, you would either say, okay, I can feed him for a few more weeks and he'll be great for the crock pot, or I'm gonna get rid of him now and not feed him at all. But once you learn that about your birds, then
It's
you kind of like want to mark that one and pay attention to his progress now.
and that's how we learn these things. It's not how I learned that particular thing, but I've learned an awful lot just from watching my birds, paying attention to what they're doing, making notes, and then going back over those notes every now and again.
Esther's got a good point there.
Yep.
Yep.
You make the notes to what you see in your journal, and like the reference she uses here a week ago, or even a couple of days, when you're making your notes in your journal, you'll see what notes you made before. And I mean, heck, if your birds really do have a problem, or if they're brewing a problem in their gut, then that'll help you notice the difference, so you can notice it sooner.
Yep. Kerry, do we have any more questions or
I do
comments?
not see any right now. No, sir. That was it.
Oh, Esther's given us a comment about the observation journal. And she says, using the journal can help give you a reference. How were they a week ago? What changed? What happened?
Yep.
And the more you do that, the more you can see trends, and the faster you can see trends. We're not born with the observation skill.
No.
We are something we have to work at to acquire. And
That's
that's
definitely one thing that I've put into practice is, standing there and really watching what's going on in
Yep.
each, because like I've got a coop of young boys, and a lot of banging and screeching going on, and if you just stop in twice a day and don't stand there and watch, you don't know who the culprit is. And he got put in the compost pile, and then a week later it started again. Well, that one was a better looking
Was the
bird.
wrong one.
He got put in a pen by himself, and things have calmed down now. They're getting along. And once I got, stood there long enough to realize what really was going on, because some of the birds were not, like you said, Jeff, they were not being able to get down there and eat. They were up on the roost all the time because the two bullies wouldn't let them down. So got rid of them, and things have calmed down out there now. Yep.
before we close, and we're getting close to time here, but we still got some time to discuss things. I just want to say we hope you don't remember every little point that we talked about tonight. What we hope is that something much better happens. We hope tomorrow morning you walk into your chicken yard, stand there for a few minutes,
Mm.
and notice one thing you hadn't ever noticed before about your birds.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then tonight has been a success for us.
There you go.
Um, I don't have. I thought I made a note here, but I guess I did not.
Here's a good idea. I
Go.
label a bench in front of each pen so that I can observe and talk to my chickens.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. That beats dragging one all over the place to do
That's what 5-gallon bucket's for.
Yeah, I was gonna
it.
say I'd go broke on building benches,
Mm.
many pens. Yeah.
And here's a question to ask yourself. If you're out in your pen, and if Sue or Carrie or myself or Jeff, particularly Jeff, was standing there with us, or standing there with you, not all of us together, but if they stood beside you for 5 minutes, would you both notice the same thing?
I hope not.
Probably not. No.
No, never do.
Yep. But that doesn't mean you give up trying.
Right.
Not that I want to tell people to invite many visitors, but a fresh set of eyes on your
Oh, yeah.
flock,
Yeah.
because you can become flock blind. Okay.
Mhm.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's why I was like, no, we won't see the same thing.
No. So, if you've got a trusted friend in the poultry industry that occasionally can come over and, help you with observation, that's a good thing. Right. And but they need to be brutally honest. Okay. Someone who's going to pat you on the back and just tell you you're doing a great job. Not so much, but it's, so yeah, it's, when I go to visit people's flocks, whether they're big, small, or otherwise, I warn them before we go. Said, look, don't take me out there if you don't want to hear what I'm going to see. Okay. And I'm not going to say anything. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. My job is to help you, see these things and fix them. And, people are sensitive, right? I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. So I kind of set the foundation before we ever go. And if they don't want to hear it, then we don't have to go look at your chickens. We'll stay here and have coffee. So.
Yep.
It's and it goes back to something I said earlier, that you can have two people standing there watching a bird,
Mm.
One of them is just another poultry fancier, and one of them may be a judge or a long-time poultry fancier. And I guarantee you they're going to see two things.
Mm.
The new poultry fancier may see and say, well, that's a pretty bird. Probably is. But a judge or somebody else that's really experienced are going to notice things like
That bird should be in a pot of noodles.
Yeah.
tail angles, wing carriage, color, width of body. They're going to pick up on the little things. And that just goes to illustrate that observation is something we have to learn and we have to practice to get good at it.
Mhm.
Well,
And-
and I mean, I made my little comment, but in all seriousness, you know, when I first got back into chickens and first started looking for reds, I had the best ones I could find around here. And, you know, because I wanted to be able to go see them and get them. And I went to a couple places and even I didn't think those reds were reds. They were production birds. And when I showed you some that I had and you were honest, that's what you said.
I think
And
it
I
was
was,
three grains of rice, wasn't it?
and, you know, I was like, I mean, this is brutal, but yeah, but this is the best I could find. And you know, you did tell me what I needed to do to try to improve that, and you also helped me find some birds that led to me culling all of that and starting over because it was faster than trying to improve what I had.
I think I told you it would take, I don't remember the number of years I told you, but it would take a while to get them
7
Mm-hmm.
to where you
minimum.
wanted them.
Yeah.
But anyhow, Jeff, you got anything else you want to share tonight?
So why? Yeah, I do. I mean, why would it not make sense for folks to get a copy of the standard for their breed, right? Or get a copy of standards, period, right? To start, if in looking through that is going to increase their observation skills. To
Absolutely.
see, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'll give
you
them
know,
a great baseline of what they need to be looking for.
Well, and that way somebody isn't standing there hurting their feelings, right? Somebody like me or Rip saying, you know, that those birds are junk. So, you know, we don't want to, and we wouldn't never say it that way, but, I mean, a copy of the standards could be a benefit to everyone, you know, like you were talking about tail angle, right? Leg position, whatever, you know, different, you know. So
I mean, the copy of the standard will even let you know what terms are used to refer to what
Yeah.
on a bird,
Yeah.
which is important when you're talking about breeding to a standard.
And the few times that I've picked up the standard and started reading it, it's really good if you have insomnia. It put me to sleep in a hurry. So, but anyway.
It will do
Sue,
that.
Sue, do you have anything you want to?
She ain't
Oh,
with us. She
I
got
think
knocked off.
See,
I
she
think
got
what
out
she would
again.
want is better weather right now.
Yeah, I think so. Carrie, what about you?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, in closing, I will only say this. I would hope sincerely that you would download a copy of the observation journal and observation before intervention from our file section in our Facebook groups. And if you can't do that, shoot me an email, shoot Carrie an email. We make sure you get a copy of it. But do that. And, you know, if you can do it tonight, if you'll just go out with that tomorrow morning when you're doing your chicken chores and just spend 15, 20 minutes observing your birds. And let us know if you've noticed anything that you had never seen before, because I suspect you just might do that. So until, I started to say next week. That's not right. Until 2 weeks from now, um, y'all keep enjoying your birds, keep learning, keep studying, and we will see you in just 2 weeks. So thank you so much, everybody. Y'all have a good evening.